All right, on to the third view in our discussion of personal identity. So, second kind of cluster of views, we've got the body theories. These are theories that say that what you are, what it is for you to be considered, persistent over time, is for you to be sort of, your body. So, what's the body theory say? Um, So the mind and soul, or the mind slash soul theory, and the psychological continuity theory, sort of as we've discussed already, have some problems. So why not reject them and say what I am, is me? Like, point to yourself, smack your chest, right? What you are is this thing, right? This thing that's right here, my body. I am me, my body. Okay, sure. What could be more intuitive than that, right? What you are is the thing that you see when you look in the mirror, the thing that everyone else sees when they look at you. It's your body. It's all of your body parts together in some bodily unity. That's you, right? That's what you are. Well, are there any, like, you have any ideas of like what kinds of issues this view is going to run into? Um, well, yeah, there's going to definitely be some, right? So the first big issue for the sort of general idea of the body theory is death, right? Um, so if you are your body, then what happens when you die, right? At the very least, it seems like when you die, you go out of existence, right? You stop existing. But but when you die, your body doesn't go out of existence. Your body becomes just a body, right? So I mean, it seems like we go out of existence when we die, right? Unless you believe in souls, and then it's not that you go out of existence. At least if you believe in eternal souls, it's that you don't cease to exist, but you sort of cease to be embodied or connected to a body. Um, and so this is maybe this is some kind of reason to buy into like a psychological continuity theory, is that when we die, our consciousness ends, and so it seems like something's going out of existence and something is ending at the same time, whereas our body sticks around after death. So how could it be possible that I am my body? Well, there's a fix to this, and the fix is the view that I wanted to discuss here, which is called animalism. And animalism is the view that we aren't just our bodies. What we are is a human organism. I am a human animal. You are a human animal. Human animals are the kinds of things that have persistence conditions of organisms, and human animals can, be born and then they can die. And human animals can, the body can sort of continue on of a dead animal. It's not really, it's no longer a living animal anymore, right? But it's a dead animal. In the same way that you can die, and then you can you can go from being a live human person to being a dead human person. Your dead human body is still going to be there. It's in a sense going to be the dead version of you. And that seems not that implausible. So I mean, it seems pretty plausible. I mean, I don't know, if you don't think that you're an immaterial object, then it seems pretty clear that we are material beings. And so if we're material beings, we're not immaterial, we're made of stuff. That's goes against the soul view. It seems like we have physical parts. Like I have an arm, I have a leg, I have a heart. Not merely mental parts, right? So the psychological view, this psychological continuity, is like really what I am is just my beliefs and desires and my memories and stuff like that. As long as they're psychologically continuous, right? And then the thought is something like, oh well, I can be uploaded into some other kind of thing that doesn't have any of these physical parts, but still be me. Well, that kind of goes against some rather intuitive ideas that are like, look, no, like part of what it is to be me is to have this part of my body, right? I have this hand, I have this arm, I have this leg. Um, this view also implies that we were once fetuses, which seems right. I mean, in a sense, like at one point in time, you were a fetus, right? Uh, Well, when you were a fetus, you didn't have certain psychological capacities. You couldn't, think in certain ways at that time. There was nothing there yet for you to have psychological continuity from time to time. That only emerged later. So the psychological continuity view seems at least a little bit problematic in that you didn't emerge and start to exist until your psychology emerged and started to exist. Well, that's well after you were a fetus. On this view, you were once a fetus because a fetus, is the early stage of a biological animal, and a human fetus is an early stage of a biological human animal. So that seems right, but there are some initial drawbacks to the view. First of all, the Freaky Friday type scenarios are just out, right? The possibility of uploading your consciousness is out. The possibility of like swapping souls is out. It's just not going to be possible for you to move from one body to another, from your body to somebody else's, and still be you on this view, right? And this might initially seem intuitive, right? Unintuitive, because we can imagine scenarios in which, by magic or God's will or something like that, Thanos snaps his fingers, and one of the Avengers moves from one body into the other body. They swap consciousnesses in some sense, right? That just seems like something that we can imagine. We've got movies about that stuff, right? So what gives, right? Like if the body view is going to be correct, like doesn't this just like automatically discount the body view because it makes these things not possible? Well, the response that the body theorist or the animalist can say is something like this. Look, just because you can imagine something, just because you can come up with a nice story about something, that doesn't really mean that that thing is actually possible, right? It might just be a fantasy, right? The whole body swap scenario might not really be possible. It might just be make believe. And so the animals can reply here, show me the money, right? Show me what the actual situation is, right? If we were to ever come across a real life case where somebody could, upload their consciousness, or there was an actual mind swap, then sure, clearly, the animalist view isn't right. But we haven't come across one of these cases, right? And until then, the animals can continue to hold on to their view because they can say, look, like, I don't actually think that this is really possible. No matter how, imaginative you can be, you can come up with all these things in your imagination, right? In my imagination, I can fly, but that's not possible, right? I can't fly. I, so that just because you can come up with it doesn't mean that it's possible. Another issue for the animalist is vegetative states. So what happens when you get into a car accident and go into a coma or have some brain damage, but you don't die, right? It seems like, if you're in a long-term coma and your brain like slowly, completely turns into gook, then the animal that's there, that's hooked up to the machines that's keeping it alive, it stays alive, right? The animal is still there, but you seem like you're gone, right? It seems like because your psychology isn't there, and you don't have the possibility of returning in any serious, capacity. It seems like you're gone. It seems like you have died in some sense, right? You don't exist anymore, even though the animal hasn't died that's there. And this is like just an attempt at sort of raw plausibility. Like, is it really the case that you've died? And the response that the animalist can give to this kind of case about vegetative states is to say something like, look, you really haven't died until when you go into a vegetable. You've lost some of your psychological continuities. So imagine you have like an accident, and you get thrown from a car because you're not wearing your seatbelt or something, and you end up being taken to the hospital. And basically, when you hit the ground, you're brain dead, right? But your body is still, your heart's still pumping, right? You're just, you're never gonna actually wake up ever again. They get you to the hospital in time. They hook you up to life support, and you continue to exist, right? You continue to be alive, in a sense. Well, according to the animalist, it seems like it makes sense to say that we took you to the hospital and we hooked you up to life support, even though you were brain dead as soon as you hit the ground after the horrible car accident. Well, if it makes sense to say that you were taken to the hospital and that you were hooked up to life support, then it doesn't seem like you're actually gone yet, right? Even if you're totally brain dead at that point. So maybe, this is a case in which the animalist has the at least ability to sort of say how they want to treat the discussion here, and maybe they can do it this way. What about brain swaps, though? This does seem like at least a bit of an issue, and I think this is going to get us towards the last view a little bit as well. So, if it becomes possible at some point in the future to swap brains with someone, or swap heads with somebody on an operating table, then doesn't it seem like you're going to go with your brain, right? It doesn't seem like this animal, like, so imagine you and me are strapped to operating tables, and we swap our brains. Well, it seems like I am going to go with my brain into your body, and you are going to come into my brain, or you're going to go with your brain into my body. But this animal that is right here where I am is going to stay put, and the animal is that's where you are is going to stay put, right? I mean, it's not like we swap animals when we swap brains. It's the same animal in the same place, just with a new brain. Well, this becomes sort of tricky too, right? It's really unclear what to say at this point, and I think the animalist has a few ways out. They can say something like, well, it's unclear what the persistence conditions of an organism are to begin with. Because like the ship of Theseus or something like that, right? Organisms are made up of parts, and you can replace those parts, and it's always not always clear when we've got the same organism. Imagine we took all of the atoms from a person over time and stored them in a freezer, and then reconstituted the person with a special reconstituting machine. And so all of the parts that were once part of you, all of the atoms that were once part of you, are now, we've got a duplicate of you. Well, okay, so now we've got a ship of Theseus case with a person. That sounds crazy, but maybe it's possible. Or, so here's another issue. Like, imagine, again, we've got two people strapped to an operating table, and slowly but surely we're cutting off limbs and swapping them. So, you and I, we're like, we're just weird transplant pals. And so, we cut off each other's arms and sew them onto each other, right? So I've got one of my arms and one of your arms now, and you've got one of my arms and one of your arms. And then we do the same thing with legs, and then we do the same thing with all of our parts, our ears, our noses, right? Slowly but surely, we end up transplanting every single part from one to the other. Well, at what point did the animal move? Right? It seems like once you've done this complete wild transplant from every part slowly moving from one individual to the other, it seems like the original animals, they have swapped, at least. I don't know. It seems at this point your intuitions should start to go. It seems really unclear what's going on. Maybe there's some sort of new organism that gets formed when you swap a brain from one body to another. Who knows? It's really unclear whether or not an animal can change in this way, right? And it's just unclear what we ought to say in these cases. And so I think the animalist can say, look, because it's really unclear what we ought to say in the brain swap case, it's not entirely clear that we should say anything. And so also, again, we haven't seen anybody swap brains yet and seen what happens. So the animalist can sort of skate by a little bit, though less plausibly. So this brings us, though, to the sort of main argument for animalism, and this is kind of the biggest argument that is interesting here. And if you're going to write about animalism in your paper, you should start paying attention now to this argument in the next one. So the argument is called the too many thinkers argument, and this is an argument that animalism is true. And here's how it goes. So you've got these two kind of preliminary seeming facts that we want to accept, that the animalist wants to accept. And if you accept these and then you follow the argument, you're going to get stuck thinking that you're an animal. that really what you are is not, a soul or a psychology or anything. It's the animal that that's sitting right where you are. And here's how the argument goes. So you, according to the first preliminary, are the only thing that's thinking your thoughts. You're the only thinking thing. You are a thinking thing, and so you're the only thinking thing that's thinking your thoughts. Right? There's not multiple things thinking your thoughts right now. That would be crazy. Now, if you're the only, supposing you're the only thinking thing thinking your thoughts, it also seems inherently plausible that adult human animals are the kinds of things that are thinking things, right? Look at your parents. Are they adult human animals? Yeah, right. There's a adult human animal there right where your parent is, or your roommate, hopefully, is an adult. And clearly they can think. Maybe they don't think all the time. Sometimes people are dumb, but clearly they're thinking things. It seems like of all the things that exist in the world, the paradigm of thinking thing is an adult human animal. All right, if you buy those preliminaries, you're gonna get stuck. So here's the argument. Premise one: there is not more than one thing thinking your thoughts. That seems inherently plausible. Premise two: if you are not the thinking animal that is where you are, then there is more than one thing thinking your thoughts. So now, given 1 and 2, basically 1 is the denial of the consequent of 2, we get this conclusion. So you are the thinking animal that is where you are, right? That's ultimately the denial of the antecedent of 2. So again, there is not more than one thing thinking your thoughts. If you are not the thinking animal that is where you are, then there is more than one thing thinking your thoughts. So you are the thinking animal that is right where you are. That's the too many thinkers argument, and it's a little bit tricky, right? What should we think about it, right? Is it a good argument? Well, if it's it's a valid argument. So that means that if you accept the premises, then the conclusion necessarily follows. But is it a good argument? Do we have good reason for accepting premise 1 and premise 2? If we're going to reject the argument, we could reject premise 1. So can we, though, deny that there are, that there's not more than one thing, or that there is? Can we say that there's more than one thing that's thinking your thoughts, right? It seems like a crazy thing to say, right? Does it make sense to think that there's more than one thing thinking my thoughts? Like me and the animal that's here, and maybe like my brain and my psychology, like, are all of these things somehow co-located in me and all thinking my thoughts? That seems like a stretch. It doesn't seem it doesn't seem right to say that there's more than one thing here that's thinking my thoughts. So this is a tough one. Like, you could deny this premise, but I don't think that you necessarily would want to, right? Well, what about premise 2? Can we deny premise 2? Premise 2 says, if you are not the thinking thing, the thinking animal that is where you are, then there is there's at least there's more than one thing. There's two things or more than one thing thinking your thoughts. Now, to deny premise 2 here, we need to make the first part true and the second part false. So we need to say you're not the thinking animal that is where you are. We need to make that part true, and we need to make this part false, that there's more than one thing thinking your thoughts, right? We need to say that, so there's not more than one thing thinking your thoughts. There's just the one thing. And we need to say that but we need to say that you're not the thinking animal. That would be to deny premise 2, and that would be to get out of the too many thinkers argument. So how could we do that? Well, we would have to deny one of the preliminaries, right? The preliminary that says that adult human animals are not thinking things. Or, that what we'd have to say is that adult human, we would have to deny the preliminary that says that adult human animals are thinking things by saying that actually adult human animals are not thinking things. But that seems a little bit weird. aren't like when you look at other animals, like take a dog, take a cat. When you look at an animal, it looks like it's a thinking thing, right? I mean, it can do basic reasoning. It can know when it's hungry, know when it's thirsty, know when it wants to go outside. It knows who you are, right? It's these. I mean, whatever thinking is, it looks like, if we have a very broad notion of thinking, dogs and cats and cows and camels can all think, right? So why would it be that? Doesn't that seem a little bit crazy to say that adult human animals are not thinking things? Well, maybe. So you can finesse the point here, right? Animalism really does seem plausible. It seems like a plausible view to say that what you are is the animal that is right there where you are, right? Um, but there are ways out of this for other views, right? And so here's one way, right? So take this example of like other animals, right? You see dogs and you see cats and you see cows, thinking or moving around, and it, if you wanted to say like, well, actually, they're not the things that are doing the thinking. In the animal is, just a conduit, right? The body, at least, is a conduit for the thing that's doing the thinking. Maybe animals also have souls, or maybe animals also have a psychology, and it's the psychological continuity that makes that animal the same animal over time. And, what they are, what that animal is in and of itself, isn't just the animal, like the being that is sort of in that animal's fleshy body is something other than just the animal, right? In the same way that what if you buy into one of the other views, what is inside of you, right? What you are isn't just the body that you have. So maybe what does the thinking in that case is like the soul or the psychology of the animal. And those things are ultimately distinct from the animal itself. So in that case, if you were to finesse the point along these lines, you could ultimately deny animalism by saying something like, well, look, animals don't actually do any thinking. But that isn't a super plausible explanation. I mean, at the very least, I mean, I don't know. I've never seen a soul, so I don't know what it is for a soul to think. But I've definitely seen people going through processes of reasoning. So I'm a little bit more convinced that people think than that souls think, right? But that's part of it. Souls are also immaterial if they exist. So it's trouble either way. Um, Well, moving on, this, now we need an argument against the animalism. And so now, if you're thinking about writing about animalism or defending animalism, you really should start paying attention now. Your papers, yeah. Um, and that's because basically the too many thinkers argument can be repackaged to be used to argue against animalism, and this is where things start to get a little bit tricky. So take these. First of all, I like it's an argument against animalism. It's an argument, right? The Too Many Thinkers Revisited. Take these two preliminaries, and they both seem rather plausible. Preliminary number one: your brain is the central organ that is involved in thinking your thoughts. That seems very plausible. Preliminary two: a brain is not an animal. It's only a part of an animal, right? Your brain is part of you, just like, or I mean, part of you. Your body has a brain. Your body has a heart. Your body has a kidney. Your brain and the animal are not the exact same thing, right? The brain and the animal that is located in the same where you are not exactly the same thing. A brain is just a part of an animal, right? A brain can't be an animal on its own. Okay, so now let's get to the argument. This is the exact same argument as before. It's just swapping out talking about animals for talking about thinking brains. Premise one: there is not more than one thinking thing thinking your thoughts. Premise two: if you are not the thinking brain that is thinking your thoughts, then there is more than one thing thinking your thoughts. Conclusion: so You are the thinking brain that is thinking your thoughts. Wild, right? It doesn't. This seems rather plausible, but we used the same argument to argue for animalism, and now we're using it against animalism to argue that what you are is the thinking brain. Here, I haven't filled out the argument completely, so if you're going to fill out this argument even further, there's two more premises that you're going to want to fill in. The fourth premise would be something like if you are a thinking brain that's thinking your thoughts, then you are not an animal that is thinking your thoughts. And so, therefore, animalism is false, and you are not an animal that is thinking your thoughts, right? So that would be sort of the end of this argument, rather straightforwardly. So, is this a death blow to animalism? Does this make animalism implausible? Can we reject this argument? If you are going to write about this and you think like, oh yeah, like I like the animalist view, then you should be paying attention right now and trying to figure out which of the premises you want to reject. So now first, can we reject this argument? Well, we have to reject a premise. And if we reject premise one, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Why? Because premise one is what the animalist also relies on in the first version of the too many thinkers argument. The first version of the too many thinkers argument, remember, says that you are, the premise one says you are the only thing that is thinking your thoughts, right? And that's what premise one says here as well. You're the only thing that is thinking your thoughts. Nothing other than you is thinking your thoughts, right? And so what about premise two? Can we deny premise two? Well, denying premise two would be to deny that your brain is thinking your thoughts. So take a second to think about this, right? Premise two says, if you are not the thinking brain that is thinking your thoughts, then there is more than one thing thinking your thoughts, right? You want to say, you basically what you need to come up with is a scenario in which the first part is true and the second part is false. And the first part for the first part to be true, you need it to be the case that you're not a thinking brain. So what exactly is going on? Well, you have to say that your brain is not the thing that is thinking your thoughts. How do you do that? How could you possibly deny that your brain is the thing that's thinking your thoughts? Well, animalists have come up with at least somewhat plausible response to this. An animalist can say something like this: look, take a second to think about what it is that your brain actually does. Your brain is a big cluster of gunky gray and yellowish matter, and there's a bunch of neurons that are connected on the outside of your brain, and these neurons send electrical signals back and forth to one another, and somehow this is related to thinking. But is this actually thinking? You know, the electrical impulses between neurons, is this actually what thinking is? Is the brain really the only thing that's involved in thinking? And what they want to do is they want to draw an analogy. So think about it like this: think about your eyes. Can your eyes see? That is, do your eyes do the seeing when you're using your eyes? Well, in a way, yeah. But your eyes don't see. If you removed your eyes, if you can, pluck your eyes out and put them on a table and give them perfect light to reflect onto them, like, could your eyes see? Of course not, right? They couldn't see anything. Your eyes aren't the things that see. You are. Right? You're the thing that sees, and you use your eyes to see. So the idea here is like, look, if insofar as you are able to use a part of your body to do a thing, that doesn't mean that that part of your body does the thing, right? You use your legs to run. That doesn't mean that your legs are running, right? Your legs are the part of you that you use to do that thing, right? You use your arm to, lift heavy things. That doesn't mean that your arm is lifting heavy things, right? Your arm by itself couldn't do it. It's you as a whole being that can use your body parts to do certain things. So maybe the same goes for your brain. Maybe you use your brain to think, but your brain doesn't do any of the thinking. it's you, right? So, and here's, I mean, the issue here is ultimately, I think the animalist can say all of this, but so can everyone else, right? So can every other theory. The soul theory can say this, the psychological theory can say this, and the animalist can say this. But basically, what they're going to be saying is something like, look, no, the animalist wants to say, look, it's the whole animal that's doing the thinking, and the whole animal is using a part of the animal, its brain, in order to think. But the thinking doesn't occur in the brain. The thinking occurs in the whole animal, right? A whole animal thinks, a whole animal perceives. I mean, it's sort of, yeah, like, think about what's going on when you kick something with your toe, right? Like, so use your big toe right now to feel something like on the floor. Now, what's going on there? Well, your brain is involved in that feeling process, but it's your whole body that's doing the perceiving of the floor, right? It's your toe touching the ground, and that electrical impulse is going all the way up through your nerves into your brain, and so it's like it's the whole animal that is you. I mean, according to the animalist, it's the whole animal that is you that's doing the perceiving, feeling something through your big toe. So, the animalist at least has some kind of recourse, some kind of response here. But, it does commit them to saying that your brain isn't actually the thing that thinks. And that might seem a little bit implausible. All right. And that brings us to the next theory, which will be in the next video, talking about the brain view.